Friends, we're talking today about the 16th gift in the portion of Beshalach. And the gift is the gift of belief or faith. Let's use the term belief for our talk today. Story goes that there a seamstress, or let's say a tailor to be more exact. It was a poor tailor in a certain town, and a rich individual came to him and said, please, mend my clothes, sew buttons, fix my clothing. And he gave him this work, and afterwards he comes back and he sees that this tailor has done a very poor job. And he asked him, what happened? What's the story? You're a good tailor. He said, listen, I have a lot of things on my mind. I have to marry my oldest daughter. I'm very poor. I have financial difficulties. So the rich individual says, come with me, brings him to his house, goes to the safe, takes out a bar of gold, and says, here, this is for you. Every time you're in dire straits, every time you have a difficulty, cut a sliver from this gold chunk and go and sell it and make your family happy and use it for your best interest. So the poor person is very ecstatic, is very thrilled. He takes this bar of gold and he hides it, he puts it down in the earth for safekeeping for when he needs it. And because he has this security of a bar of gold underneath his house, he now goes happily, and he's a good tailor, and he starts mending clothes, and he starts developing his business. With the financials off his head, he can be very successful, and slowly but surely, he becomes a very successful tailor, he becomes rich, marries off his daughters, etc., etc. Later on in the years, a poor individual comes to this now rich tailor, and he says to him, please help me out. I know you were once poor, now you're rich. You can understand my situation. So the tailor looks at him and says, you know what? I'll do what this guy did for me. Takes out the bar of gold from his house, hands it to him, and tells him, listen, cut a sliver whenever you want to have some money and sell it, and you can marry off your daughters. Wow, thank you very much, says the poor person. And he goes off his way. As he comes home, he takes the bar of gold, takes a hammer, and wants to take off a piece to sell it. And he realizes after he takes the hammer and he bashes the gold bar that it's a fake. There's only steel inside. It's only gold plated. Comes back to the rich tailor and he says, what is this? And he takes a moment and he says, you know what? For me, this bar of gold was really a bar of gold because I had the belief and the faith that I had a gold bar underneath my house the whole time. And for me, it was a bar of gold. Now this story about faith and about belief and about believing in something and therefore freeing your mind and being able to do what you need to do is a nice story. But I'm asking a different question today. Knowing that there's a possibility that a bar of gold can be only gold plated, next time around, when this individual gets a bar of gold and has a suspicion that this is not a real bar of gold, will he have the same faith that will free his mind and will enable him to do his job right? This is a very interesting question. After do you believe? And here's the gift that this portion is giving us, delving into the concept or the idea of belief, emunah in Hebrew. Emunah, as we know it, belief, is in this week's portion. What happens is that the Hebrews are going into the sea on one side, the desert on the other side. The Egyptians are coming, and all of a sudden God splits the sea of reeds and they pass and the Egyptians drown. And the Torah tells us, "Vaya'aminu ba'Hashemu b'Moshe Avdo." They believed in God and in His servant Moses. I want to talk about the belief in God. What exactly is that belief? We understand that the belief in the existence of God, which means there is a God and it is a fact and it is true. We're not dealing with that here. This is not the concept of belief in the Torah. Believing that there is a God and the notion that there is a God is a true notion and it is a fact. That's not what we're dealing here in the Torah, and this is our greatest revelation. The Torah, the scripture, is dealing with the belief in God, in his capabilities, in what he can do in this world with his free choice. If he makes his will our will and our will his will. That's what we're dealing here with. How do I know that? Because later on in the book of Numbers, when Moses has to talk to the rock and he hits the rock, God says to him, you know why you're not going to enter the land of Israel? Because because you do not believe in me, in my capabilities to have you speak to the rock and water coming pouring out of this rock. Instead of that, you hit the rock. So therefore, the belief is not in the existence of God, but in his abilities. That's what we have here in the portion. Understanding that, we have a very, very interesting understanding about the concept of belief. Before we get into that, and we share this idea, we have two other proofs from two different commentaries. Rabbi Yosef Elbo says the following thing: the belief in something is when you have it in your heart, some kind of a he called it a very solid drawing or an image that your soul cannot contradict this feeling or this image that you have in your soul, even though he does not know that this is the ultimate truth. Rabbi Yosef Elbo, 14th century commentator, does not need the true understanding the truth about God, which means does he exist or he does not exist. For him, it is obvious that he exists, and we'll soon explain why. But he deals with faith, belief, meaning in God, in his ability to redeem people, to exercise his freedom of choice and intervene in this world. That's the concept of belief. The 20th century commentator and authority by the name of the Chazon Ish, Rabbi Yishayahu Karelitz, says as follows, that you need to have basically a meditative state and a clear mind in order to grasp this belief. And it's not about understanding the truth, it's about feeling the belief in something, okay? Because you cannot see God or understand this truth, but whenever you have this belief in you, you see the world differently because you understand that God is operating. You believe in God, that he's operating in this world. Now, today, understanding that belief and the gift of belief is not believing in something, whether it's true or not, but believing in its ability, his abilities, in the entity's abilities. That is something that we need to expand on. And today we're going to understand why the Torah is not talking about the belief as something that we have to prove, or it is a fact, or it is a truth. On the contrary, that is known. We're understanding why belief is something that we have to believe in its abilities. And here we're going on this journey, and hear me now about this concept. Today, let's take an example. A person is standing on the road and there's a green light. He can pass, he can be a pedestrian, he can pass across the road. And there's a red light for all the cars that are coming. And we know that if I have a green light, I can go and the cars will not hit me. But you know what? There's always this one meshugana, okay, this one wild individual that will cross this red light and run me over. So what gives me the possibility or the ability and the guts to just cross the road? Why am I not afraid that someone is going to run me over? More than that, a doctor, you go to the doctor today and you want to heal yourself from a certain disease, and this doctor comes with a white jacket and he tells you to take this and this pill, or he wants to operate on you. How do you know that this guy is not a meshugana? How do you know that this guy is not a lunatic? Maybe he escaped from a mental institution. Maybe he's in disguise. Furthermore, our monetary system today. Once we had gold, we had ox and a donkey and a field. Those were our monetary assets. Today we have numbers in the computer that the bank tells us that they have some kind of assets against those numbers. We know they don't have anything. We know that these numbers are just the numbers in the computer, and if everybody demands their money right there and then, the banks are going to collapse, but we have a certain notion that our money is safe and that we actually have money in the bank. All these three cases, or these stories, are very simple. 99.9% of the time, it is very obvious to us, statistically, factually, that this is how it's going to go down. No one is going to run you over. Majority of doctors are okay, and money is safe. But still, 0.0001% does not give you that option. It could happen. What prevents you from being disabled, from holding back, from crossing the street, going to the doctor, placing your money in the bank? Is belief. You believe. You put the mind aside, you put the facts aside, because you know that it could happen, but you believe that it wouldn't happen. Statistically, use any measurement of calculations you want, but in the end, it is your belief that doesn't keep you paralyzed on the street, in the bank, or in the hospital. But here comes a greater notion. We are human beings, we have freedom of choice, so therefore we have infinite amount of possibilities in our lives. So in all these possibilities, 99% of those possibilities can go one way, which we investigate, and we know in our right mind that it's going to go one way. But in all this infinite amount of possibilities that we exercise every day, we also have an infinite amount of unforeseen consequences, which we cannot see, which are an anomaly, which could happen. So infinite amount of possibilities or consequences that are not foreseen. How do we deal with that? We deal with that with infinite amount of small beliefs. An infinite amount of small belief. There's another term for it. One big belief. And when we believe in a certain entity, and that is that entity, this infinite amount of small coincidences or small consequences or small things that could have happened, it is reality that this entity exists. The only question is, if we believe that in a certain coincidence, in a certain action that we take, it's going to go one way or another. We believe that it's going to go one way and not another. So it's not about believing in that entity, in my terminology, God, in someone else's infinite amount of possibilities and consequences. It's not a matter of believing in that. That's fact. It exists. Statistically, whatever we want to call it. But we want to believe in something else. We want to believe in that entity, that it will work right for me every time. And if I stop believing in that, that means that I do not believe that it will go in my way. Same thing for the people of Israel. The greatest gift that they gave us in this portion is that they saw a phenomenon, the splitting of the sea of reeds. It could have happened in any other way, and they believed in the power of God to intervene in that moment. It could have been that water toppling over their heads and not the Egyptians. But it stood for them and it killed the Egyptians. And that was the great belief. God has all the power in the world. That is true. We know that. But we believe in God. That we're connected to Him. That we adhere to His words. And that He answers back. So that's the concept of believing in the power of God and in His abilities. To answer the question that we started, if you give me a bar of gold today, and I know it might be a metal inside and only gold plated, yes, but you know, if I believe in God and I believe in His abilities, one day He couldn't give me a real gold bar. So that notion of belief that it could happen will keep me going and will make me the best tailor in the world, securing my family's future. It could happen, and therefore I believe in that option, and I have a quiet heart, a steady hand, and a tailor-like profession. Belief in God, the 16th gift in this week's portion.